Hi, pleasant good night to you all, to the viewing population, the wider extension as so far as it reaches to the world. Tonight we have Miss Arita Clark, Miss Michelle Mitchell, and Miss Sherman Jules, and myself, Kevin Myers. We are here to discuss basically the homes of the Children's Authority and the Children's Authority. Is it working for our children, of our nation, or is it causing more harm? I think I would like to pass you on first to Miss Arita Clark to start the conversation, and we'll continue.
Hello, good afternoon, children to be and by extension to the world. We are here as concerned parents to discuss what we as parents have observed individually and as a group. We have seen where children have been taken from our care and placed into an institution under the authority of Children Authority. And the question is it that you're taking our children from our home into a better environment? Is it the institutional home is much better than our private home? What remedies could be done? What could be done to alleviate a parental distress when a parent is in distress with their teen or young child? So from then, we'll just speak with Ms. Mitchell and let Ms. Mitchell give us an insight as to where we go from here.
Okay, so this morning, practically every media house and social media site would have published a story, an account of two young ladies, obviously because they were at the St. Jude's home, who planned an escape. If the account can be believed, the young ladies would have asked to have used the facilities, and then having been allowed, would have used the cover of the toilet tank and would have struck the individual who was in charge of monitoring them on her head twice. Now, if media accounts can be believed, that blow or those blows were so severe that the tank broke and the individual could not receive stitches immediately because it was bleeding so much. One of the young ladies, it is alleged in the story, was recently featured online on a social media platform where she was threatening to do harm to a male relative. She made certain assertions. The male relative treats me as though I'm his wife, wants to sleep on the same bed with me. She called a school in Port of Spain and said the children there know how she comes to school. She was crying out. She seemed to be traumatized. She seemed to have been in distress. We didn't hear anything further except she was removed and she was taken into the care of the authority. This is the follow-up story that we're hearing, that she is lashing out and she's striking out. She's part of a duo that struck someone who was placed to monitor them. Now, the headlines are saying that the caregivers are not, they're asking for protection from the wards, from the young people that they have been placed to monitor and to give care and to be in charge of. There are also allegations that these individuals are not properly trained to deal with children with the issues that they have when they are placed in the home. If these allegations or these assertions are true, then is the Children's Authority doing more harm than good? That is our question here this afternoon. Are they helping or are they hurting? Because my question is, when these children are removed from their primary surrounding, be it good or bad, because we on the outside, we are the ones looking in and we have limited information. So we make our own judgments. We make our own inferences. But is it that there is some method of determining whether there are emotional or psychological or developmental issues? Do they just take children out of what is perceived to be a harmful environment and just place them in these homes as if they are just being kept, but they are not being treated? That is my concern.
if I may step in at this point as a male, who's around a lot of younger males and females with their social issues, social issues. And in dialect with a young man a couple of days ago, he's 14. He expressed the fact something happened throughout his day, and he expressed the fact that he was frustrated. So understanding his frustration, I tried to find out what he was frustrated about. And he was frustrated about something that happened to him out of the ordinary. And in that light, we are seeing a lot of young people, young children especially, expressing their frustration in different ways. Sometimes we don't take time to understand their frustration, and this particular individual was just frustrated about something that happened to him outside of his ordinary day. Okay. How he reacted to that is what we have to find out. What he wanted to do something that was strange to him or strange to us. And in finding out the deeper problem, I realized that a lot of young people don't have this space to express themselves. And when they do express themselves, they feel like they are being punished. Which brings me to this whole organization of Children's Authority, this whole approach of our nation's children. Because this young lady, or this particular case, this young lady is self-driven, and she understands that she needs to cry out for assistance. So she's supposed to have a say in her life as to how to treat her as well. And it's not supposed to be a clear cut of taking this young lady from an endangered place, put her in a further endangered place without treating her. And that is what happens with a lot of our nation's children. So in that, I would say the authority, the way they treat our children, is actually making it more worse. Okay. It is making it more worse because the social space that they put them in and the limelight and the light that they put them in, they actually are treating them like victims. And when they are treated like victims, they now will have to react in a particular way. And then the people, when they react, are now asking to become victims, to be protected by victims. Yeah. And that is the drift of the entire thing. Children who are victims are reacting, and persons who do not know how to treat these children are reacting as well. And when the children do something different from the ordinary, they are now considering themselves as victims. And that is the whole issue of they are actually failing because they do not know how to treat with these children. There is no one clear cut to treat with all children. Each case is special. And this young lady case is special, just like every other child that is in their care and needs attention. So actually they are making it worse rather than to provide an actual solution to these problems that these children have.
So you're saying that from your interaction with the young man, there was something that he needed an avenue, a channel for expression. But many young people need to be able to express themselves without fear of being judged or misunderstood or mislabeled. They need safe spaces in which they can express themselves and get the type of response, the type of interaction, the type of support that they need. You know, I believe that very often we tend to forget when we were ourselves young people, and we try to reason with teenagers. We try to deal with them according to logic, when at that age they are very much driven by emotion. Apart from which, we would find that in their own development, young people go through a phase where their peers, their friends, have more influence than us, than their parents. There is a testing, there is a time when what we would have put in them in terms of the values that we would have nurtured them with, what we would have put in them in terms of our sense of identity, etc. When they get out into the wider sector, when they start to deal with others who come from homes where they were nurtured differently and where the value systems differ from ours, that is when our training would be tested. Now, sometimes parents would say, do what I tell you to do, or don't come and tell me about this. Book and boy don't mix. The fact that the young man may like someone, you don't, if he doesn't think that he can speak with his caregivers, because very often we have children who are being nurtured by aunts, uncles, godparents, grandparents. So, whomever the caregivers are, they may not be open to having those conversations. And if they don't find acceptance in their homes and they don't feel that they can speak without fear of recrimination or fear of negative consequence in their homes, then they will form attachments elsewhere. And what you're saying, Kevin, really makes a lot of sense. But if I am removed from my home where I feel so frustrated, so repressed, so misunderstood, and I'm just placed in an environment and no one there is trying to hear my voice or to give me a voice, then it stands to reason I expect that the sort of behavior, the sort of displays that these young people are being accused of would become standard and would become commonplace. Tremaine, you care to get in here with us?
This topic. My 2 cents on this particular situation is that the Transit Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, they remove children from their homes and they place them in these residents. And my question is, what intervention do they offer for these children? What follow-ups do they make? What is the whole logistic of just removing a child from a place that they may be in danger and placing them in these homes where they may also be in danger? Because let's not forget the most recent Juliet Jones report. We cannot just remove a child from a home and just place them in a safe house and not provide the proper intervention. These children have been through traumatic events in their lives and they are going to react. And the next thing is that we don't listen to children. Even when children speak, we don't listen. We don't listen at all, because I had an issue with my very own children where they made disclosures to the CSAs at the authority, and the CSAs flat out told my children that they were lying. You don't tell children that they are lying. You have to be neutral. You have to be objective, and it goes to show that they are not properly trained to deal with children. We have the Transit Authority questioning children, but are they properly trained in forensic interviewing? And the fact of the matter is, okay, even let's say someone down here is training them in forensic interviewing, is that person licensed and registered to train these individuals? You see, it all goes back to the qualifications again, and that is something that the authority has been hiding quite a lot. When you request the qualifications of the employees, they are withholding this information. You cannot, because at the end of the day, or any Transit Authority Act, it specifically says that, we have to have individuals that are trained in psychology, social work, pediatrics, etc. So this event is quite unfortunate because clearly this young lady is crying out for help. Children just don't react. Children just won't become violent overnight. Clearly something is wrong. There is more. We are so judgmental as people, and the first thing we will look to say is these children are so violent, they're so bad, they're so this, you should have leave them where they was. But that is not the point. The point is that these children have been through some sort of traumatic event and they need psychological intervention immediately. I don't want to hear anything about we have a waiting list. We should never have a waiting list. This should never happen. Children need intervention ASAP. So that is my take on the situation at the moment.
And let me add in from a social work's perspective. There are several approaches and theories that are linked to child or teen development. In particular, the biological aspect or the biological approach is important. The psychosocial approach is extremely important, along with the cognitive approach. Because one has to understand that from the teen stage into the adult stage is a crisis stage. And if psychologically the systems aren't prepared to deal with a child's biological changes, biological development. Then you have within the homes where the caregivers are in control. Do they understand the cognitive changes and development within a teen? And further, are they aware of what psychosocial effect moving a child from one environment, violent or not, abusive or not, into another environment? So from the moment that child experiences or sees any triggering factor, cognitively, that child is triggered. Psychosocially, that child will be triggered. Because that child is in the Erikson stage of the role identity versus confusion, where he or she is trying to identify self. And when one has to look at the reasons, or sometimes not in this child's case, but in most cases of where children are placed at institutions, they are deemed as beyond control. But the question is, socially, is the children authority ready to deal with a child who is going through that identity versus role confusion, which includes the biological changes? Because as adults here, and for children listening, we would know that there are hormonal changes. And with such hormonal changes, the body is now going through that biological change into adulthood. And that can be conflicting in the mind cognitively. But it's true, authority, besides, we know they have their social workers and their assessment officers. But are there the therapists to help those teens transition from one phase of physical, biological development from teen to adulthood?
If I may butt in from here now with that statement, and all that is said on your behalf, Mr. Rita, they will write perfectly well and say yes in different forms on paper. They will perfectly write, and that will substantiate any conversation in the public space, because they are given that power and authority. Now, that paper or memo that they send out to us as citizens to say yes, we'll have to take it, rather than a check factor to say, let us really see if you can really do this. There is no check factor. There is no regulated body over them to ensure that exactly what they say they can do or doing, that they're actually doing it. That, I think, is the mysterious factor over either they are helping or they are hurting, because there is no form of accountability to make such determination, more than conversations from parents as to real life stories and documents that debunking that information that comes out from that authority. And I think that is the clear factor of this. The other part of those children developing and how they develop and if they are ready for that, that is a part that I think this pilot authority has no clear. It's a pilot authority that if they're flying a plane on autopilot, they just flying an institute on autopilot. Nobody actually holding the wheel and steering it properly, while the children as the passengers are actually falling off the plane. And that is the critical thing that we have to address in our society to be able to help our children. More than the institutes that they go, is only so much that the school can do. And a lot of responsibilities being placed on the school, when we know the family is one institute that is critical. The school is also the other place that child spends most of the time. And there's a breakdown now in the other part, which is the society that's supposed to take that child into adult and take care of that, even the family. So we have a disconnection, and you have all the responsibility being placed on the schools. So the teacher in the school have to be the parent. The teacher in the school have to provide for the student. The teacher in the school have to monitor the students in the school and home too as well. While these children are not seeing clear role models or clear role model institutes, that if this young lady had an issue, there's an institute to actually take care of this issue and solve the problem immediately, and move on. Because it might just be this young lady just want to have a conversation with one of your ladies who's experienced to show that type of love. Yeah? Rather than to be placed in an institute in her mind that institute offer abuse. So before she's being abused, she's reacting.
Yes, indeed.
Before she, and then now you have a person who was a victim now be going to be treated like a juvenile. Because that is the story that is being told to the public. And that is what is happening with a lot of our children. That is how the Prime Minister talked about how we get children from primary school and they're going to secondary school and they turn monsters.
Yes.
Check your accountability, check your institutes, and check how we treat with these children. And we have no accountability for those things.
If I may interject, one of the issues I have is that the authority could do no wrong. You could write them with objective evidence, but they could do no wrong. They never accept responsibility for their wrongdoings. And I agree with Kevin when he says, there's no one to oversee the trans authority. I had a senior woman police officer tell me that the trans authority could do as they please. No, they are not allowed to do as they please. They are not above the law. You cannot be treating trans like this and telling me about international best practices and in the best interest of trans. Do you even know what is in the best interest of the trans? Because you treat it like it's a one for all. They don't do proper investigations, and they don't really sit and as a body and as a team to come up with ideas and intervention for this one child. To me, it's like every child is the same and every approach is the same. It would never work because all children and all situations are different.
But the thing of it is, and you all make such great points, why the rush to remove children from their parents' care? Why not a rush to give parents assistance to help them to better care for their children? If we have to get all the ministries involved, if you need the Ministry of Social Development, because it is not ideal to have a male parent and a female child, especially one coming into young adulthood, sharing a bedroom. But why the rush then? You're going to take this child, put her in a facility where there are probably dorms, where far too many of them sharing a room. But you don't look at that. You look at what you perceive to be immediate danger with a male parent and a female child in this one bedroom or one room environment. Why the rush to remove the children? Why not a rush to give the assistance that might be needed to make the situation better for both the parent and the child or children? You see, they may have the best of intentions and they keep lamenting the fact that they don't have resources. Perhaps the resources are not being skillfully and strategically assigned. So don't have people going and taking children out of their homes. Have these people making home visits regularly to sit with, deal and treat with what is happening in the home. Parenting classes, social interventions. All these are other conversations that we probably should be having, because clearly what they have been doing since inception is not working.
But Ms. Mitchell, there is something called the Convention on the Rights of a Child. Is an authority using that convention as a guiding tool for them to be part of the decision making?
Your guess is as
because it doesn't seem so at all. It seems as though Tran Authority has their own model that they are following and not accepting the international approach of how to treat the children. Because had the Tran Authority been following major India, US, Brazil, China international model towards child protection and development, Tran Authority would not be doing, as Kevin called them, the pilot study still.
Yes.
Because to me, they're still on a pilot drive.
Yeah. Yeah. Essentially, people are taking a tush. They're practicing on people's lives, on children's lives, and ultimately on their families' lives. When you remove a child, now you made a very good point. You're taking a child out of what someone on the outside perceives of as an unhealthy environment, but it is the environment that the child knows.
Yeah.
And as undesirable as we may deem it, that is what has provided a measure of stability for that child. So when you completely remove that without any sort of preparation, psychological or otherwise, you are clearly doing more harm than good. It is
And
not
causing
pulling up and ripping a child out of a home.
and hindering the child's development psychologically and even physically. Why physically? Because the child no longer sleeps properly,
That's right.
eats properly, nor
That's
socialize properly. So the system, inclusive of children authority, are now placing children in a distressing situation and more or less a distressing environment. So you place me in this home called famously St. Jude's. And I am in this home here. And I am seeing a repetition of the abuse and the assault and the verbal abuse and everything that I experienced. What are you doing here? My only option is to get out in whichever way I can. Because I ain't getting no help.
Mhm.
1 week pass, 2 weeks pass. You are telling me that children are placed in these institutions 6 months to how much years before I hear counseling starts sometimes. From the beginning, as soon as these children, all they want to make a decision, take away people train, all right then. You must have a backup plan.
Yeah.
And as soon as you remove those children, you know you're going to take John Tom 6 a.m. By 3 p.m., you don't have a psychologist or a social worker on call to start to deal with that child one time.
Yeah.
We don't want to hear, well, the social worker or the psychologist on vacation, or this one contract now finished, so we ain't renew the contract. Who is helping who there? Who really helping who there?
That's a
Because at
really,
the end of the day, the child, we don't all be talking here, the child still suffering, you know.
yeah.
Because when they place my child in that institution, me not hear for that 2 weeks, me not hear nobody counsel, even though she was young. You never hear nobody ask the little minor. You never heard of a social worker visiting the child. So during that 2 week period, my child had no one to speak to. So what about other parents whose children are within this institution and 6 months because you have to wait on children authority? I remember, Miss Mitchell, you reminded me today, the mother of the two infant baby, where one was 5 months and the other one was 18 months. The children authority took away those children from the mother almost a year going to almost 2 years, approaching 2 years. The mother has lost her parental rights by seeing her child because she says she's crying. I haven't seen my child taking his first step. I haven't heard my child's first word, right? I'm not there to potty train my child. When the children authority took away those two children, one was 5 months and breastfeeding, you interrupt that cognitive development because we all know the purpose of breastfeeding. So first thing first, children authority, all interrupt that child's routine there one time. The girl who was a year and a half, now she's about 2 going on 3, approaching at the toddler stage, which we know is the terrible 2. When she's acting out at that, wherever they place those two children, now this is just on the teen stage. What follow-up has they done? I asked the mother contact, not even a morning, not even a good night, the children can hear the mother's voice. What happens when these children at, let's say 8, 9, the children authority decide to return that mother from Tobago's 2 children at 7, 8 years old? What relationship would that mother have with those children?
No. Wow. Wow.
It brings to the conversation on the table that the right of the child is being taken from this institute and twisted in a way that it locks the child out of the actual right.
Yeah.
So they are hiding behind the right of the child and actually taking and ripping that child rights. to shred or children to shred.
Look at me. My daughter has had 6 legal representatives from the Office of the Solicitor General. Neither one of them, one by one, has never asked the court for the last 6 years to provide counseling to my child. They saw the trauma. They're hearing the adverse effects of access here and access there. And if they say they're not from the Children Authority, but they're part of the representation of a child before the court, and we are speaking about the rights of the child. And if they were the voice of my daughter for the last 6 years, and my daughter's voice has not been heard in the court, any institution, including Children Authority, telling me, Arita Clark, they are seeking children's best interests, may I turn my head sideways, because they are not. They are not seeking children's best interests. So for them to get away from the problem, throw the child in an institution. Let the parent, let the institution sort it out. Despite I sure they did inspections of these homes, I should do monitoring and evaluation of these homes. And half of these homes, I could say majority of these homes that they dump these children in, either fail the licensing inspection, but you know what? Children Authority wants no responsibility, because when they place my daughter at that home in Tobago here, and I call Children Authority, I say, by the way, you don't ever follow up on the home, you don't know anything about the home, is the home license? So I made some mention about something. Well, we don't know anything about that. So I said, but wait, and the court placed my child in that home?
Who determines what is in the best interest of a child? And how is that determined? Is there a checklist? And who says that what's in the best interest of Arita's child may necessarily be the same thing that's in the best interest of my child? It can't be a one size fits all. So who makes that determination? Aren't we supposed to have a checklist? And whatever is in the best interest of the child, isn't whatever is in the best interest of the child supposed to be whatever situation, scenario, or environment that ensures the rights of the child are preserved and protected? Isn't that what it ought to be?
I don't think
because maybe I have an idealistic perspective of it. I am thinking that this is what it should be. But who makes that determination, and what criteria do they use to make that determination or deliberation?
You know, Michelle, funny enough, you should bring up that I had requested such information from the Trans Authority via the Freedom of Information Act. And these people just quoted the part of the act for me. You didn't go into details. I'm asking you, what criteria are you all using to deem persons fit persons, etc.? And you're quoting a part of the act. So basically, you're telling me is a one size fit all. That is what you are telling me, because you have not explained to me in detail what makes this person a fit person. Basically, you're just telling me, go and look at the act, which is ridiculous. You cannot just come and tell me, go and look at the act, and they would want to send you a. This is the final letter. This is our final letter to you. They are so disrespectful with it. They are so disrespectful. And the thing is that the Trans Authority is blatantly infringing upon the constitutional rights of these children in their care, and they don't seem to care. You're talking about the UN Convention for the Rights of a Child, but you are not even complying with that. If we take a deep look, an in-depth look into what is going on with these children, their rights are being infringed upon. And then we have these attorney from the Chief State Solicitor's Office. I am lost when it comes to them, because they are saying what is happening and they are not properly representing these children. They are supposed to be representing these children and fighting for these children rights, but all they do is sit there. Well, we send a report to the court. Yes, you send a report to the court. What does the report include? Are you doing a thorough investigation, or are you just calling on the phone and asking how you going? You enjoying your stay? That is utter madness. And if that is representation, it's better the children don't have representation like that, because that is a failed representation. And in terms of the Insurance Authority providing psychological intervention, I had an incident, where that my children were under the care of the Children's Authority. They were monitoring the children. And I had to be calling the CSA to ask them, well, where's the psychological intervention? And having him telling me that, well, the psychologist recently resigned, so we don't have any. And, we can't do anything about that. So when I mentioned that, well, the child is going through whatever trauma they are going through, this man will look to ask me, so what you want me to do about that? I had to drop my phone because I was this close to cursing him. I had to drop my phone because at the end of the day, you cannot tell me as a trained professional, you are asking me what I want you to do. It's better you leave your job. If you don't know what to do, it's better you just leave your job and leave it to somebody who knows what to do.
Now, in speaking to such, in some history that will go back to how these homes end up in existence, that these homes came as homes for apprenticeships through the Catholic board and religious boards to offer some salvation for these children that we place there, that they have a full action plan to take a child confused, hurt, emotionally damaged, and produce that child into an adult, a well-respected adult. Which brings me to the fact of asking the question, what is our country's social order? What we expecting as citizens? Because our institutes supposed to mold that. If the country looking for role model citizens as to trade and whatever, academia, whatever the case might be, our institutes, even the ones to treat with battered and confused children, supposed to be along that same mechanism to produce that same person. Yeah? Which brings me to Children's Authority. What are the children, the persons they are producing out of these homes when we send our children there, or our children goes to these homes that are abused, hurt, battered, and confused? What is the product of these children? Because it seems like 9 out of 10 times this time you're talking to adults and they say, well, I used to be in the home, I'm going to check the history and check how it is right now. They are confused as adults.
Yes, you're correct.
So we actually have to know, besides the authority, check what is the aim, objective of these homes. Because it seems like these homes have lost whatever they were created for in the 19th centuries. It seems that they are totally confused and it's just for $1.
When I was in Barbados, I remember a father killing the mother, mutilating her body, dismembered her, placed her in garbage bags. The children, some of the bigger ones, 9 children. And what the Bayesian authority did, instead of separating those children, I can't remember they rented a home, but the children were placed in a home where they assigned state caregivers. So you had morning shift, evening shift, and for today, they had counselors coming in, psychologists, so there was a steady flow of intervention from the inception. So even though daddy was in jail and mommy dead, the children had that support from. So there was no trauma in those children's lives. Who became top athletes, pro basketballer, pro base, everyone achieved. And we have the Children Authority who have more money than many other Caribbean islands, have children going into institutions, coming out worse than they went in. Now, we're not saying that all persons who went to institutions did not succeed. But when a child is frustrated, a child cannot concentrate. A child cannot focus. And when you're in a home and they're picking on the favorite child or the best behaved child, and you are seen as the same delinquent child as you're coming and you're leaving, my behavior won't change. It will get worse. And the question is, where are the therapeutic counselors? Where are all them people who come up with their counseling psychology degrees? Where are they? Because these are the people we need right now. I see, I won't call it educational institution, but producing umpteen MSCs in counseling psychology. Where are they to come into these institutions or even in Children Authority to help these, because this is what the children need, traumatic interventions, therapeutic intervention. And I ask myself, all these masters and PhDs, how are you contributing to Trinidad and Tobago's future development? How?
We are being destroyed by degrees, the PhDs, the MScs, the MAs, the BAs.
Well, as a colleague told me, PhD means a person holding a degree.
That's right.
Because many of them are in a position, and I'm saying, even if it start the therapeutic session, but we can only do 4 sessions. That's it. How could 4 sessions help? Or, well, I'm too busy, and my ratio of clients to how much I have, I can't. So where I start the profession for? And my concern, I always ask myself, why are persons doing these degrees and not contributing socially? Because when you do a degree in counseling psychology or therapeutic or whatever counselor you want to be, you are here to help our nation children, you know.
That's right.
We as parents shouldn't be crying out and saying, I went here and I ain't get no help. Whether you want to offer your service privately or via the government, where they, if we are speaking here, how many of us know of us counseling psychologists that we encountered during our torture under the remit of the Children Authority and the Family Court? How many of us could say we met a counseling child psychologist or a counseling psychologist to help us help our children, during that intervention crisis, not in the crisis intervention stage? How many of us? We heard of them? But Children Authority are plenty of them.
It have some. However, they do work for Children Authority.
In Children Authority?
They do private work for the state.
Listen.
Which is appointed by the authority.
But Arita made you see, that's the point I think that we're missing. Within the Barbadian society, their focus is the preservation and protection of relationships and bonds. That is not ours. And because your philosophy and your ideology is such, then you would align your practices to that. They want, whether it's familial relationships, whether it's relationships between and among siblings, they realize the importance of protecting and preserving such relationships. So you don't have 2 children by so, one by so. They felt it important to keep 9 children together. And we have a children's authority that is ready to rip one child away from his father, to take children away from their mother. Why is that our go-to? Chances are, if we strengthen the basic building block of society, which is the family, do not take them out of their families, but provide intervention and care to strengthen the family. The homes should be a last resort when a child has absolutely no relatives, no parents, no siblings, nobody at all, and nobody interested in taking him or her. We should not be populating these homes. We should be looking to depopulate them. So especially after, forget Sabga's report, because what is fresh in our minds is the Judith Jones report that they keep sidestepping. When you are being told that these homes are failing, clearly the approach is not working. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing in the same way with the expectation of a different result or outcome. We are only compounding the crisis. We need to take a step back and we need to adopt a different approach. Give the parents the skill sets that they need. Let me tell you something. The home is the primary institution of socialization, education, and everything else. After the home, the school, because all children ought to be in school. We can't jail you for not sending your child to church, but it's against the law not to send your child to school. If you put those mechanisms in place to assist the homes wherever there's a lack, if a child has gone through some sort of trauma, and you start by not removing the child, but getting someone, even if the parents have to go to therapy, you have for the group for the child who is the most traumatized, and you start to give them the skill sets to deal with the issues, then we wouldn't have these problems. But when I am in a home and I'm having issues and I cry out, and you take me and you place me in another home where I feel that my liberty, everything is removed from me, I feel as though I am being punished. I feel as though I'm being re-victimized. You are further stifling that young lady's voice when you do that. Because she had concerns and she cried out. Then you put her in a home where all of her liberties have been removed, where from all appearances, she has not had any real intervention, no emotional assistance, no psychosocial, no sort of therapeutic intervention. So she's going to continue to act out. And what do we see? We see hostility. We see a child who could potentially become a juvenile offender and then get further lost in the system when it is avoidable.
Now you hear the Commissioner of Police and the Minister of National Security talking about crime on the rise and crime. And I am sure if we have to look at every 1 in 10 adult criminal offenders, they may have committed 1 or 2 offenses as a juvenile. And while committing those offenses, were there any sort of intervention for them, especially therapeutic?
We believe in incarceration, not intervention.
Right. Because we don't use the restorative justice approach. We find that incarceration is the best option of discipline so that the person would not repeat the offense. But when you punish someone via incarceration, you turn that person into a negative individual. Not negative, but there's nothing positive with you incarcerating me. I made a mistake. I don't know if you all remember the story with the husband, the fellow whose parents were murdered, his sister got killed, the Babulal young boy. And my heart goes out to him. Because there it is. Now, Trinidad came out after. And when Trinidad came out, he was still a teenager. The last thing I remember, he would have been caught for stealing mangoes or something from a neighbor. And instead of, up to now, I don't know, I haven't been in the system around him. As a member of the public, was there any sort of intervention for that young boy? So like he getting worse and worse and worse, and nobody helping him. This is a boy witnessed a murder. Even if he didn't witness, he saw the bodies of his parents and his siblings and whatever. What has the state done? He's in jail now, and his attorneys are asking, could you all expedite this man's trial or case to get him out of that environment? But we still have the man there. No intervention for that young boy, none. And to me, they like to see that the child into the adulthood remain the same. They see there's an next one day, but there's no assistance from the state.
It brings reference to a story that I once saw from America where a principal took over a school with a lot of students that was delinquent and given a lot of trouble, lashing out. And there was one particular student that came from a background of violence. And until that student threatened that principal, life, because that's the way he knew how to lash out. And she checked herself and realized that there had to be something deeper within this child. This is a child. A child will learn from the environment. So he came from that environment with that sort of attitude, believing that it is correct. How do you make such change? You look for the child's strength to create some sort of reshaping of mind and allow them to push them in that strength. So he loves sports. So she created a football team, America football team, for that child. And that child was allowed that space to express himself. So the anger, the environment that he came from with anger, he was be able to transition that into his strength and became a sportsman and won a championship for the school. And that is the transition that our children need. This young lady that is in the home and every other child have some area that they love. And we need to take their pain and their hurt and transition it into that space where they feel comfortable so they could excel. I'll give you this for example. There is a young man going one of those prestigious schools in the East. He's 14 years, but his father left home and left his mother. And his father used to mind other children other than him. And he passed for a good school. But his motivation and his drive from coming from that abstract environment, he used it within his school to say, I'm going to show my father that I could make it in society. And at the age of 14, he put forward, he was mature, he matured faster, and he loved academia. And at the age of 14, he was able to write CXC because he had a point to prove coming from a home that was broken. He used what he was good at, which was school, and transferred that pain, that hurt, and turned it into motivation to become somebody in life. And this is what needs to happen with all. We don't have bad children. Children don't born bad.
That's right.
They just grow up to be bad. And we need to catch them before they don't grow up. And even if they're in juvenile homes, you can still look for these children's strengths
Yes.
and actually
And from
motivate
a
them.
and from a social worker's theoretical approach, that is what we call strengths perspective. Once there's intervention, you see that there are weaknesses. As a social worker or therapeutic counselor, you and Kevin, you're so correct. Your role and responsibility is to tap into that child's weaknesses. And if that child has any strength that needs to be strengthened, your role and responsibility is to chart that child to that direction of strengthening that child. But is it that children authority have these experts doing that?
No. No. No.
Because
It's
to
clever.
me, from a social worker's perspective again, you have a child who come into an institution weak. And you weaken the child instead of you strengthen the child. And by weakening the child, what we fail to realize, when internationally and regionally here in China, people bashing China authority or China authorities fail or they're not meeting the mandate, it's not looking good professionally and internationally. So I don't know how comfortable these persons and heads are sitting within the China authority and feeling good that we have children. Look, there's how many? 154 runaways from when to when this year? 154? In Barbados again, a child run away once, he or she is charged. The parent can't account when the child run away, he or she is charged as well. And the purpose of that is to avoid repeat offenders running away continuously. Some of these young girls run away 1, 2, 3, 5 times. I remember there was one about 5 times she ran away, if I'm not mistaken. It's because, one, there are no repercussions. And I'm saying, if China authorities following the mandate or the directives of the Rights of Convention, the Rights of a Child, their main rules are administrative and legislative. And if you are seeing that we're having an increase of children wandering or running away, and the only option is to put them in a home, then legally you all have the mandate, right, to change policy, to say, listen, it's either we start to penalize the parent or we penalize the child. So that the child, even though the child is kept on, I see I will lean back there, even though the child is given trouble at home, a teenager will then consider my action because there are consequences for me. But when you have children authority taking me in and I'm doing what I want, you're encouraging the behavior to get out of control. That is just my take on it.
But you're not addressing what's the root cause? Some children run away from something and some run towards something. So many times in our society, it's the cocolocks. They hot more than they sweet, they this and they that.
Yes.
But there are instances where children run away from something. What is it in the home that is causing the distress? Now, I am not saying that it is applicable in every circumstance or in every situation, but we're going back to making the point that one size does not fit all.
Yes.
You must, Kevin keeps making these wonderful points. There must be a point of contact. Everybody has a redeeming quality. Though, listen to me, it matters not how weak a child is, he or she has a strength. That child needs you to validate that strength. Give him or her an outlet for development and expression of that strength so that the self esteem can be built. You don't take a child out of a home, put the child in an institution, because in that child's mind, it is the same as incarceration. It's the same as discarding the child. It is the same as some form of punishment
And rejection.
and rejection. And let me tell you something, rejection opens the door to resentment.
Yes.
That child is going to become resentful. And then when they act out, we come with the labels. Bad, you're this, you're hardened, you're that. Nothing good will come out of you. Give the parents the tools. Now, we have to understand as well that many times cycles are repeating themselves. Because a 14-year-old might be the daughter of a 28-year-old. Do the maths. And because that 14-year-old is the child of a 28-year-old, someone who was herself 14 when she had a child, and that mother never got the intervention, you're going to find those negative cycles perpetuating themselves. You're going to have the continuation of these cycles of impoverishment. If we do not sit up and take stock of what is happening and make a concerted effort, we have to do things differently. You don't need to tell me, well, I was planning when I opened this pilot authority here, I might have about 900 cases, but I have about 4 times that. So what are you going to do? Stop bringing them in and send your staff out.
Yes.
Stop taking them and ramming them into homes all over the place and send your staff out to give support. The social worker pops up at your home anytime. You cannot do intervention by calling. I call it to find out how the children going. They're going good? Yeah, hold on there. Let me write down that. So they're giving any trouble? Yeah, all right. I can have a child buried in the yard for all you know. And I'm not even being facetious because these people are ridiculous. Stop taking everything into yourselves. Start to give outreach. Listen, this child needs intervention. The state needs to help. Subsidize that. Help the parent to pay for it.
What I was going to tell you too was
Parent to pay for it. You understand what I'm saying?
before
These things.
Before there was children authority, we had the social welfare.
Thank you.
And when children used to act out in school, social welfare were called in. And when they recognized whether the child want to play football and he can't get the money for football, the social welfare would have linked the child to an organization. Or if they recognize the parent's financial situation, mother in particular, they would have provided the public assistance.
Come on.
As soon as children authority come in, all that done because it took away the powers of many state agencies.
Too many.
And I could tell you, plenty people, parents, supported them via public assistance. And we never had this. We had the poverty. But when I mean poverty, no light, no water, basic things. But the social welfare function was to go to T and Tech to make sure they get light, make sure the roads were paved so the ladies works, and to make sure the children were in a comfortable environment. If the children didn't have the books, you write the Ministry of Education. That's how the book grants came about, and the uniform grants. Now you have children authority in charge now. So parents living in a 1-bedroom house can't afford to expand the home. The only option for children authority is to take the child away and move the child into a home because the house is too small. Take the child. Take the child. Instead of children authority say, let us live with housing or work or let's say infrastructure for lights and build a 2-bedroom house or talk to Habitat community and build something nice for the family. They rather separate the family, mash them up, and leave them in pieces.
Yeah.
So my purpose, and I keep on asking, what is the general purpose of children authority? Because as soon as they came in,
To destroy
we never
families.
say in the village, you don't know who would have committed a crime as a juvenile, and it's only he alone from the village went to jail or did something. In today's society with children authority, you're hearing how much cases before the children court for which criminal 316, I think.
Too many.
316 is too much children in Trinidad and Tobago. We should be
Many.
hearing 25 and 15. 316 is plenty juvenile offenders.
Yeah.
And most of them, I'm sure, I am not there, I'm not the social worker, I'm not the probation officer, but I'm sure if one has to look at the family's financial situation, all the parents want a little help, you know.
A little
How much is the public assistance? 1,800 a month for 3 children? Raise that. Put
Yeah.
families in a better position so that they
Yes.
can help themselves. Who's
Yes.
going to open here? Up to
Yes.
now, we are here what measures in place from Children Authority as to how many parents we know the NGOs are doing it, but cost of living going up. And as I think one of you mentioned, when the little food card, well, no, not food card. The first thing Children Authority like to tell you why I ain't going to apply for a food card. Children Authority should have some kind of provisions to help parents because coming this end of term, this end of August here, we have more frustrated parents because they're starting to buy the books, the children needing more money. And my take, what is your really role and function? Because when you have to protect a child, it's a holistic approach. It's not protecting a child from abuse, yes, abuse, but neglect by not eating on time, having good breakfast, because most of these children who are given trouble in school, did you have breakfast this morning? No, miss. What you had for lunch yesterday? Since yesterday morning I ate. And it's children authority, because they're hearing that negligence, let me take away the child from the mother. No intervention, no assistance. And I'm asking myself, what are they really doing? Is it a name and a salary? I can't say it's political, I'll be bashed. What is the purpose of children authority? No, sorry, pilot authority. Pilot authority, we'll have to call it now.
Yeah, when you look at the numbers in schools, anytime there is no school feeding, the numbers drop.
Yes.
There are some children that all they get, the only meals will be the breakfast and the lunch at school.
At school.
But you don't turn around then and say, the parents negligent, the parents, and we go back to it. Give the parents the assistance that they need. What we need to do is to function in such a manner that we strengthen the families. But why is it that they seem so fixated on fracturing families? They want to break families up. Look at Kevin. Kevin spoke about it. All that he was talking about, look, there was cause for concern, cause for concern, cause for concern. And when finally they were put in a position where they had no choice but to admit what he was saying was true, what was the first thing they offered, Kevin? We can take your child into our care.
Yeah.
How is it that the first thing you know says, Daddy, let us sit down and let me see what we can do for you. Let me see if would Friday evening be good? Between 5 and 7, could you take the child for counseling to X place or Y place? How come and when they take these children into their care, they are not cared for?
No, they are not cared for. They are very passionate about this particular authority because I would like the audience to know it's not a agenda something.
No.
It's about doing this for children. And they were created to meet international standards based on whatever UN convention that each country, once you sign that treaty, you just have to do it. And they just drop that basket and just name them children authority and get them. And persons in society boasting about they force pressure to start this authority. But when we look at this particular authority and the achievement in our society, they are hurting not just children, but society on the whole. And they are continuing to hide behind the blemishes of the law when they were not only created as a lawful entity, as a social, economical part of society. And we are not getting value for our money when we talk about children's authority. X amount of millions, increased twice.
Yeah.
is the projected budget.
Yes.
When these millions could have been actually be taken and offered grants
Yeah.
with
Yes. Yes.
monetarian to
Because,
monitor these
Help
things. It
parents.
is.
because
Yes.
long ago, when a child used to give trouble and the child was before the court, and if there was a responsible adult who could take that child in, many children grew up with strangers, some friend, some godparent took them, and those
Mm-hmm.
children came out well. But when the
Yeah.
children authority got that power to make
Yeah.
a decision for that child, the problem escalated.
So it's
The
almost as
child,
if the children's authority has negated the rights of our children. Yeah. It is as if the children, let me tell you something, eh? When you see where someone's mindset is, because when this authority was first framed and there was discussion of getting a vehicle for the director wanted an Audi. And the point was raised, why don't you get a 4x4 utility vehicle because of some of the places you would have to go in the execution of your duty? Because you see, like me, that idealist thought that this director would be going far and wide to all the remote areas to see what was going on because he or she would be interested and invested. No, no, no. They went back and forth and wrangled and wrangled. And do you know what the director's vehicle is? Not a utility vehicle that could go through all terrain to find children where they are, but an Audi. And that tells you everything. They intend to deal with children's issues through their degrees, through their certificates, through the books, and from behind their desks. That is why you could tell me my daughter is being monitored by the Children's Authority since the 2nd of February 2021. Nobody ever come to the house. Nobody ever even make a phone call. So I don't know. It's probably by drone. Yeah. She remains, she's being monitored. The authority shall continue to monitor her. I don't know
what,
when it starts because I know for something to continue, it must
To
first have
start,
commenced.
yes.
It must
but
have commenced to continue. Listen to me. Since the 2nd of February 2021, this woman write this report and said, and I'm saying, but where's the intervention you all talk about? Where
but
the
the,
monitoring you're talking about? When I'm telling you that nobody ever even called to say, well, we're calling to find out how baby girl X is going. Not a single call.
but Miss Michelle, my daughter was awarded the court from December 2015 to 2018. And children, no, anybody here in a child awarded the court, the child should have been in an institution. But the child was in my care. And not for one day, an authority called and said, Miss Clark, how is your daughter going? Not one day.
You need to clarify there,
Mhm.
because persons hearing you say that your child was a ward of the court, but in your care,
Yeah.
would not understand that once your child is legally, by order of the court, a ward of the court, whether that child is in your care or not, it means that you, as the parent, have no legal right to do anything on your child's behalf. So you better make that clear. If
So they,
your child is in your custody,
yes,
physical custody,
yes.
there is no real care and control rather than feed the child, whatever, whatever. But medically and otherwise, you cannot make certain determinations or decisions on your child's behalf because the court has said we are in
I take
charge of
control,
that
yes.
child.
Yes. But when I have to leave Tobago now, on the request of Children Authority for my child to be assessed, so the 300 plus the 200, that was $500, the state didn't bear the cost. When I had to hire the taxi from the airport to Children Authority, but for me, no, it was in Port of Spain. So I had to pay another driver $200 from Port of Spain to Mount Hope, right? When we were finished, we had lunch because the extensive and the long period of questioning, over 900 questions. When we left, one of the officers asked, who paid for your ticket? I said, me. But the child not awarded the court? I said, yes. But how are you paying for that? To date, I never get a refund. All right. My child acting out. When I decided, here went Trinidad authority and the authorities use their power. When I asked for my child to get seek counseling, so everywhere I go, they would ask, is the matter before the court? And I said yes. There was a court order. Obviously, when I produced the last one, the child's awarded the court. But Ms. Clark, we can counsel your child. Trinidad authority is telling me, if your child is a subject of a custody matter, we have no authority to interview or counsel your child. But my child, as you rightfully say, let us get the true definition, understanding of my child being a ward of the court. And at no point in time did the children, they got involved only for one day and they recused themselves. Thereafter, Trinidad authority never called to follow up with Ms. Clark upon the removal of your child at this home in Lambo Signal, Tobago. Any changes, not a question from 2016 when she was removed from the home. From 2018, when the wardship was lifted, a question has been asked by Trinidad authority. And they are the ones representing the child. But mind you, had my child sustained an injury or any allegations of abuse during that 3-year period as the child was awarded the court, the same Trinidad authority would have fined CPU and every police in Trinidad and Tobago senior soup to the dog after him and come to arrest Rita Clark because the child now is in we care. We in control of the child. So conveniently, children become ward of the courts conveniently. Because if a child is placed in a home and there's no follow-up, because trust me, that child taking that toilet seat to perform that act is an angry and a hurt child.
Yeah. You see, many times you act out when you can't articulate, you know. We look at anger and listen, in many instances that we are even aware of, anger is really fear. It is fear. So it comes across as anger, but this person is so afraid and unable to articulate what he or she is going through. And so you lash out. But then what do? We label rather than now when the children, the whole thing, the children's authority, according to its legislation, it shall not be subject to the direction or influence of any external entity. Now, when that was framed, it was to keep the children's authority pure and keep it beyond undue influence. It was not to make it a law unto itself. It wasn't to make them feel they could do what they want and you can't question them. It was not for that reason. But here is where we are now. So you're failing the children in your care and you're failing the children who are in their parents' care. Because when I read my report, and I'm saying, but the only thing they didn't say in that report is remove the child from the care of the mother. The only thing, and I was shocked, the only thing with all these substantiated allegations of abuse. Now, mind you, they alone substantiate the allegations of abuse. So when you went to the accuser's home, you spoke to the accuser's neighbors. But when you came to my home, you didn't talk to any of my neighbors. When the accuser made certain allegations, and I gave you the names and the telephone numbers of persons who could disprove those allegations, you never called any of those persons. I gave you all that information because the report shows you the persons interviewed and the telephone calls made. None made on my behalf because they're lazy as well. So they are given to believe any allegation. The first to make contact and the first to report is the one that they will believe. Yes. And they would come to your home as the accused and they would interview you and interact with you in such a way as to substantiate a belief that they already came with, a bias that they have already come with. Now, in terms of Kevin, you have the dissonance because they just cannot understand that a mother would allow the things that mother was allowing to happen to that child. No, it's only fathers that do that. That is their belief and their understanding. So every time he made a claim, every time he made an allegation substantiated by medical evidence, you couldn't believe it. You couldn't believe it. No, fathers don't operate in such a way. Kevin is going against what we have been cultured and nurtured to believe. So here's what. Kevin, you know what? We believe you, but we're going to take the child off your hands. We will assist you by taking the child off your hands. There is a root here that we need to get to. Something different needs to become the order of the day.
And for fathers, the same authority to me has muzzled fathers from speaking out, because there are many men who are hurting, who know their children are in several environments that is not appropriate for a child.
Yes.
And when these fathers are reaching out, the question is the children authority listening? And one question that just came to my mind is that if I am a child of abuse and I decide to call children authority for counseling, is there a protocol or a practice or even a parent could just call children authority and ask for counseling for their child?
No. But I can call and I can report you. They will come and they will take your child and they will say that your child needs counseling in a report. And 5 years later, because I have seen it, people have said, well, there was a determination made that my child needed counseling. Children's Authority, since 2016, I'm still waiting. Now, chances are the person who did that report would have done so prior to his or her contract having ended, and then it probably was not renewed and nobody ever followed up on it. And I have a real problem with this as well. I think you can't be giving people 2-year contracts where children's lives are involved. Put them on a year probation, yes, to work under another officer and then keep them on. But every time, let's say the person dealing with Kevin's matter, that person's contract comes to an end and she leaves, or the contract is not renewed. What happens to your matter, Kevin? What happens to your case? You go right back to square one. And then sometimes people come, and when I come to work now, this is how high the stack is that my predecessor left, but then my stack is double that. So your matter just stays there and keeps going to the bottom. And that is how children keep falling through the cracks. We're asking, where are the people with the social work degrees? Where are the people with the psychology degrees? UE is sending them out. USC is sending them out. COSTAT is sending them out. But the government is not employing them because they do not see those skill sets as important.
Or they are not willing to be part of the clique.
Not because even that. Do you know how many, let me tell you, people graduate with as medical doctors, and then they want to give you a 3-month contract, a 1-year contract. Listen, in a school, no school zone or district, no education district should have one guidance officer. You shouldn't even have one guidance officer per school. There should be a ratio, but there is an agenda at play. Crime is a business, and it suits someone's agenda to continue to perpetuate broken homes and broken individuals, to continue to give rise to this broken society. So when they look at people like you and like me, we dare to change, to challenge and to change, because you are saying, oh yes, your daughter is in need of trauma counseling. You say that since the 2nd of February 2021. We're going into 2023. I have been paying a private counselor for my daughter. I have been paying. I'm not waiting for the Children's Authority, because by the time they get around to finding her file, wherever it is, the damage would have been done. I don't care whether court order, no court order. I will watch you fix in your face and tell you no. Because how could you tell me that a court matter could deter you from doing what your professional oath, your code of ethics compels you to do, to give that child help and assistance to restore his or her equilibrium and mental, emotional, psychological balance? Will you look at a parent and you deny a child care because there's a legal matter? No, man. No, that can't be right. It cannot be right.
But Mish, you know what I have an issue with? You know, you always see in trans authorities reports that all the claims are substantiated, claims of physical abuse substantiated. All these claims of sexual abuse substantiated without any medical proof. But you're substantiating the claim. So okay, if you're saying you're substantiating the claim, how come there's not an ongoing criminal investigation into these substantiated claims? Because these things are criminal offenses. So how could trans authority tell me you substantiate the claim by your social investigation, but the criminal aspect of it missing? It ain't making sense to me, no. Make it make sense.
As Michelle once said, we are the statistics.
Let me tell you something, An allegation of abuse was made against my elder daughter and against me. The young lady came and her report says allegations of abuse have been substantiated. In her summary, she said marks of violence, MARKS, plural, marks of violence. The medical report from the doctor at the hospital, the doctor who saw the child the day before, the Children's Services Associate said, full body medical examination, nil cuts, nil abrasions. All there was a cut under the foot. The child stepped on a razor while in the other parent's care. The other parent used
that charging port.
And Arita, we're getting some feedback from you. Yeah, the other parent used a nail clipper to cut it and then made an allegation that my elder daughter dug the younger one under her foot with an icing tip, right? And then beat her under the foot with a dabbler or an offset spatula, because the story changed a couple times. So you are saying in your report that the allegations of abuse were substantiated by a singular cut under a child's foot. And in your report, you said that the child's body bore marks with an S of violence. You are a trained social worker. You're supposed to have documented evidence. Where are the photos to substantiate your claim? But the child was out of my care since the 22nd of January. She was taken to the medical facility on the 24th. On the 24th, a doctor did a full body examination and found no cuts, no abrasions, nothing on the body except that cut under the foot. You saw the child on the 25th and you said the body had marks of violence. When I brought that to your attention, you say the authorities, powers that be, that you stand by the associate's report. And when I brought it to the ombudsman's attention, he is afraid to deal with the Children's Authority. Because
this sounded like it.
Hold up, Miss Clark, I am going to say what I'm going to say. When I took it to the office of the ombudsman reached out to the Children's Authority and was satisfied that there is no cause for any action in this matter. And by telephone call, I was informed that on the 15th of April, you sent me correspondence that said such. Up to now, I've never received it. So I said, kindly scan that letter and send me a copy via email. I'm still waiting. The head of legal reached out to me and said, listen, send us what you have and we're going to go through it again. I said, this is just a stalling tactic, just a delay tactic. You all are not going to do anything. So sometime in June, you come back. Well, the ombudsman said that, his stance remains unchanged. I said, okay, Provide me with a document that says that. And you are telling me, going on 3 weeks now, to give the ombudsman an opportunity to formalize his response. I say, so when he rejected my matter on the 15th of April, he didn't formalize his response then? Everybody is afraid of the children's authority. It's like when you make a child, you ain't train the child. You give the child unfettered power and authority, and now you as the parent afraid to discipline the child. Because even the ombudsman is cowering in the face of the children's authority. When I give you 148, 37 to 48 page affidavit, tearing their report apart and showing you everything, how do you come to my home if I am the legal, I am the sole custodial guardian legally, and you ask me my religion and I tell you my religion, but you put the accuser's religion as the child's religion?
Ms. Mitchell, I'm just seeing that the Children Authority want to be operating like the TTPS. So I think what I could suggest, we take all the directors from the Children Authority and place them by the Police Complaints Authority, and take the directors of the Police Complaints Authority and bring them across the Children Authority. Because the Police Complaints Authority is so effective and fearless, why can't the Children Authority be so protective, powerful to protect our children in Trinidad and Tobago? What's the problem?
Listen, the Office of the Prime Minister knows about the issues with the Children's Authority. Nothing is being done there. The Office of the Ombudsman knows. Nothing is being done there. Board after board after board telling you that the management of the Children's Authority don't keep them in the loop. So you put in boards to oversee the operations of the Children's Authority, and the management of the Children's Authority not communicating with the board. And they want to be, hello? How does such a thing happen?
So you see why parents and teens don't know who to go to, because we have dial this for help, suicide prevention, dial this. You call the hotlines, or the child have a problem, I call Children Authority. All right. They say there's a counseling child line. You call. We don't really provide counseling, but we could listen to the child. My question is, if Children Authority is established and they're there to hear the views of our children, and they're there, because to me, if there's a matter before the court and the so-called judicial officers see there's a complex case, there's nothing wrong with bringing the Children Authority, because that should be their mandate and their role and their function. But the Children Authority is not about that and preserving the peace within families and dispute and conflicts, No. The Children Authority's mandate is to take our children out of our homes and drop them in an institution, close the books, and forget about these children.
The Children's Authority's mandate seems to be to feed the criminal justice system. And I say it without fear of contradiction. And I say it according to how she name. I'm saying it bold, I'm saying it in big. The Children's Authority's mandate, unwritten, unspoken mandate through their operations seems to be that of destroying families towards the end of feeding the criminal justice system in this country. That's what it seems to be. Because you can't look at a father who keeps reaching out and telling you this is the case. Reaching out and showing you with indisputable medical evidence substantiated by medical doctors willing to go on record and say to the father, well, you know what you're saying is true, we're going to take the child and we care. And do what with him?
I feel we need to help Children Authority change the job description of who they employ, because it is clear that the persons that they're employing don't know their job description and their functions and duties and responsibilities.
You ever try to make something and the recipe just not coming together? Don't matter what you put, it just ain't coming out right. Sometimes you just need to scrap the whole thing and start over.
That's just
I agree with you.
The culture of that authority is such that if you leave anything it is going to infect whatever comes after. So
I
I
agree
could
with you.
understand why the Christian scriptures said that sometimes the Lord will say, when you go in there, kill everything and everybody. You had to start over. You had to burn it down, but don't even build on the ashes. Go somewhere else and start over.
And I,
Because it is endemic, it is deep in their core, and they don't seem to be able to help it or to help themselves.
and as Tremaine said, we need to name it the Children and Family Authority.
That is a fact what Miss Mitchell stated, and just a little I doesn't want to talk about them because I find it irrelevant. They have become irrelevant.
They should be, but you see, they have too much power, and
they have too much power.
Other people's lives and
exactly.
causing mayhem and chaos and trauma.
What about the 5 boys who ran away? The 5 boys, what were the issues?
And I give it this, there seems to have a formula that once you are not willing to abide by that formula, you cannot enter there. And I will give this experience. In my personal experience, when I went out to the acting director of Children's Authority, I was given the privilege to speak because I was saying, but I can't be talking so much to some people who, and they don't hear me at all. They don't hear me at all. Females are not hearing me at all because you don't have the right to speak on behalf of a child, biblically, because you're a man. You didn't bear a child for 9 months, so you don't have the right to speak on behalf of a child. Literally told that. And I felt hurt about that. But anyway, I was given the opportunity to speak in a forum where they had a number of persons, and I started to get passionate to the director. And the director brushed me off. I said, nah, you can't brush me off, so. And I was given the opportunity to go and speak to her. And when I put forward my claim and my case to her, that is nothing personal, but it's something professional, that you all are not acting in the best interest of my child, so what is all doing with the rest? She understood that standpoint and tried to make a change and ordered a new investigation to take place to pick up on the slack that a number of these persons did. Because remember, this document that they presented from the authority is when it reaches to any forum is goal, and especially in judicial officer eyesight.
Yes.
So if you take A and put it as a B, and it's wrong, that A that you turn to a B could change a whole situation.
That's right.
So it's supposed to be on point. You get paid for that, to be on point. So when I highlight the fact, how could I give you this? I give you X to investigate X to see if it's a common X or a capital X. You remove the X, what I talk about, and put Y. And no way X is there. So that could never be a reflection of what I give to you.
That's right.
No, we could never get it wrong. And I went with that particular document and sat with that woman and highlighted everything. Look at here, but look this here. But why this person? And I did. She said, well, you go investigate everything. I said, I'll give all the benefit of the doubt. And after she ordered that investigation, she went on holidays from since 2019 and never returned.
Hey.
Because she was not supposed to interfere and right-size the wrong.
That's it.
That took place.
It's a culture. That's what I'm telling you.
She was never supposed to interfere with that.
I am saying,
and she never
these
returned.
are not things I said to you. You take out my X and they put a Y for you, Kevin. They put a B for me. Look how high up they went in the alphabet. They went as far as the East is from the West. And when you're bringing it to their attention, they refuse to change it. They refuse to order a fresh investigation, and the Office of the Ombudsman refuses to push them to do it. Because if you come to me and I say, but I never said this to you, this is not what I said. These are the nothing of the sort. And when you challenge them on it, the Ombudsman and all would not. Hear what I tell you. We can make a strong suggestion, but we cannot make them act. So when you put a document before the court, which misrepresents me in a matter and could potentially put my child in harm's way, when I am saying to you that what you have documented here is not a reflection, a true reflection of what I said to you, and nobody can make them change it. When somebody was willing to do it on your behalf, she was sent on vacation and her contract was never renewed because you must not go against the culture. You know, you see the first CULT. That is a cult.
And what took place, this same individual that as a man I went to, who put forward that report, I say, well, ma'am, look, you're an investigator here. I had a meeting with you. Look, me and you say, no, here, this woman that is your investigator, you're the team lead. This is not what I gave her. Look, she omitted everything that was presented to her.
Yes,
this could never be true. That woman wiped her face and laughed at me and say,
prove it.
That is if you could get that report. I say, but I have it.
That's what they do.
She laughed and 4 or 5 years after, she is now responsible, and I will take personal responsibility for my statement. She is now responsible of taking children out of home and putting them into the care of the state.
That is what they do. You know,
5 years after, she's responsible for that. After 5 years ago, she laughed at me when they did wrong. And I am saying, when I see this authority and the actions of these children and what it is taking place, it's a point blank reflection of the institute. It's just like we have all these children with C exam and everybody running around and saying, well, it had to be the parents, but you're not checking the curriculum.
No.
You're not checking the delivery of the teachers. But you're checking the children and the homes. But it must be an indicator to tell you to check yourself as well. That is what the authority is not taking. That indicator, which is the statistics, to check themselves.
They will
be using it as some sort of power to get funds and all these nice things.
You're sure it's not about just collecting a little stipend, or shall I say a little?
It's not even about a stipend or a salary, because you could do your job even half-heartedly and still get your stipend or your salary. But you see, when it is a parent can say to you, you have omitted critical information here. You have misrepresented me here, and you have done so deliberately. And they look at you and they tell you, we are standing by that report. And I am proving to you, I say, but this is what I said, and you wrote something completely contrary. Because, and I said it before, in their minds, they cannot see a man operating the way Kevin operates as a parent. That is how females operate, with that care and that attention and that investment in the child's welfare. So that dissonance, they can't come to terms with it at all. And then there is some, you see, we have to try to understand as well what sort of trauma these same individuals who are responsible for our children's care went through, what they underwent, and some of them probably still have not had intervention for themselves. You understand? So you have hurting people who are supposed to be in this organization helping people, but continuing to exacerbate the situation.
But Ms. Mitchell, the screening for Crown Authority's employment is very rigid.
It is not. It is not. I have somebody who was interviewed by the Children's Authority. It is not. And that is why they are so hard pressed. If you are advertising a vacancy, obviously you would list the criteria in terms of the academic degrees that you would like and the number of years of experience. If I come to you after and I would like to find out what is Miss Jew's qualifications as a Children's Services Associate, what this person that you keep telling me is a psychologist, what are her qualifications? You can't tell me that that is protected or that is exempted under the FOIA, because you would have published it to fill the vacancies. The vacancy had to have been advertised. However, you are bringing people into the authority who don't have the requisite skills for the jobs that you are giving them, because it is a feeding frenzy. It's a friends and family network, and you're bringing in people who don't have the skills. So you can't tell me that your degree is in sociology with a minor in psychology, but you come to do something that someone requires a degree in social work to do. sociology and social work are not one and the same. Tell me your degree is in psychology with a minor in social work, all well and fine.
Yes,
But
yes.
you cannot tell me your primary degree is in sociology and put you to do the work of someone
Social
who
work,
ought to have a degree in social work.
What's
and
your
That is what they have been doing.
mind you, even with all that, you're getting promoted to team lead, eh?
How you mean?
With all that, you're getting a promotion. These people are ridiculous. Look, case in point, let me just bring across something to you all. I made a remark concerning the individuals who are looking after my children during a court case, and the authority was ordered to investigate the matter. You know what the authority do? The authority call the person, you ever went to jail? What you went to jail for? Oh, you don't smoke marijuana or you don't just smoke cigarette. Write in a report, the person is a law-abiding citizen who went to jail for making a citizen arrest him and do not smoke marijuana when the whole neighborhood and the whole TTPS know he is an offender. But you coming before the court to put this false report when I have substantive, objective information and evidence from a ministry stating otherwise. But they're afraid to release the information. They're requesting the information from the court. They're telling me that confidential information. How could information on a report on myself and information concerning my children be confidential?
Because it will compromise us to release it. What is wrong with you?
Oh, that is not my problem. If you do what you were supposed to do, what you're being paid to do, if you do it in the right and the legal way, you wouldn't be scared to release it.
You see, some people just take the job for the salary. I'm working through an authority. So it's just a famous title of job. Or, so some people told me, I just want that 2-year experience to put it on my CV to say I work at an authority. So I'll be recognized, I work for a state agency. So therefore, you could hear persons applying, wanting the job, not for the passion or with the helping mind in mind. It was about them and their personal agenda. It wasn't about working to help children,
Listen, Ms. Clark ain't lying, but I will tell you something. Every organization has a culture. I remember when I worked, it was in community development, culture, and women's affairs years ago under Mr. Leach. And so I went and I'm there, I'm busy getting things done, and people like, hello, what is going on with you? This is not a work you're doing. That's not how we operate here. This is not how we operate here. Slow down. You're doing too much. Because everywhere has a culture. Now, I would venture to say that you would find the odd one or two. But you know what we keep seeing happening? People with a different mindset, who have a real love and a real passion and who want to do the right thing, don't last very long in the children's authority.
Yeah.
They leave.
Because the intake and the rotational
try
staff.
to get things to go better, and we know this from personal experience, when they say, but this isn't the right way to do this or whatever, they can't take it, so they leave. So people will call you and tell you, look, it's nothing against you personally, but at the end of the day, I have children to send to school, I have a mortgage or rent to pay, so I have to do this.
So as we look to wrap up here this evening, I want to ask each and every one of you, on a scale from 1 to 10, where does Children Authority lie on that scale?
You have to fit in a minus sign.
A minus what, 5?
You have to fit in a minus sign. And I was saying,
that's what I say. The Children's Authority needs to be scrapped. It needs to be scrapped. They need to start over from a reconceptualization. Everything. They need to start over. They need to
Children Authority.
Nobody. It's a self-governing, self-regulatory entity. They are a law unto themselves.
So they're getting funding, they're getting increase of allowances and so forth.
That's right.
And no going to the committee to query the performance and the standard, and nothing like that happening.
The Children's Authority is like when you make a child You spoil the child and then you end up in the home afraid of the child. That's the best analogy for it. It happens. Kevin, you know that you've seen it. You've seen
Yeah.
where people raise children and then they're afraid the children, they can't talk in their own house. That is what the children's authority is. You've given them unfettered privilege, but you've never balanced or tempered that privilege with responsibility and accountability and the need for transparency. So because that is the culture, because that has become the practice and the custom, it's hard to break it now. So I say scrap the whole thing. Scrap the whole thing.
Like we, as parents throughout Trinidad and Tobago, like we have to lobby and advocate to have the Trinidad Authority scrap, because if the government ain't doing it, if who the agency or the government agency in charge of Trinidad Authority, isn't it the office of the Prime Minister?
The office of the Prime Minister on that agenda now.
It just bubbles there. It just resides.
Yeah, that's just underneath.
When you could read in the newspaper that the minister with responsibility for the authority and the powers that be at the authority have a strained relationship, that should tell you something. Because nobody tells the authority what to do. Not the ombudsman, not the court, not the minister in charge of it, not the board of directors they put over it. And if we don't see the danger in that, and if all of these things that continue to occur and to reoccur are telling us something, then we have what you call eyes wide shut, because they open and we're not seeing, and we're seeing and we're not perceiving.
So, folks, this was our discussion. Our rating of Children Authority, now called the Pilot Authority, that we would like to rename it the Children and Family Authority. These were our experiences. These were our one-on-one discussion in a group format to let you, the members of the public, know that just as we have challenges, you have challenges. Just as we have issues, you have issues. So we are saying, next time we meet again, we want to speak further on Children Authority. So to Ms. Mitchell, to Kevin, and to Tremaine, and to Trinidad and Tobago, I want to say thank you. Is there any closing remarks from any one of you to tell Trinidad Authority what they need to do?
I think I would like to.
You go ahead, Mr.
I think I would like to speak from a man's point of view, because it's even stronger in that aspect that the authority has failed. Clearly, the authority has failed, continuing to fail, and is failing. And it cannot be business as usual, because nothing that happened is going to stop happening. It is going to continue to happen, as we have seen. We're running from it, but we can't. And the first objective and aim is to get rid of this authority. It is no longer independent and serves its purpose, as you could clearly see. And I don't even want to consider that as an authority. It is an authority. It is not an authority. It should remove its name of children's. Children's, that's supposed to remove from there.
Yeah, that corrupt atrocity, that's what it has become. The Children's Authority is a corrupt atrocity. And what I would like is members of the public who have had any sort of issue, interaction with the Children's Authority and can relate to what we are speaking about or what we have spoken to this evening, reach out to us and share with us, because 100 Frenchmen can't be wrong. People lie, but patterns don't. And it's a pattern of operation. We are seeing it here among ourselves, and I am given to believe that the wider public have had these experiences as well. And the only time pressure can be brought to bear is when we have this empirical data that shows out of 1,000 cases, 997 are the same way. So
I would like to say something before we move on. These cases are being hidden also by the judiciary.
Yes.
From public knowledge under the disguise of children's right.
Yes.
Because a number of incidents have taken place with precedent verdicts before the court that is hidden from the public, and I want to know why.
Yes. Because all of a sudden when there's a clamor against or any issues against children authority, they come up with these 1,000 calls on sexual abuse and 5,000. And the question is, if you're having 300 and minimum 300 and something juvenile cases before the court, how come you're hearing all these thousands of cases that you are dealt with and how much addressed? The matter adding up at all, because me can't see the equal sign at all in this story here with Children Authority.
They're convinced that we're stupid.
Yeah.
They're convinced that the population is stupid and easily beguiled and bewitched and bemused. So they felt out all of that. They all their little fabrications, and they feel they're tying us up.
Oh. Mr. Main?
I am just annoyed, because the judiciary is also part of the problem, because at the end of the day, you have all these judgments coming out of the court, and according to Kevin, you can't find one. You can't find one, One and case in point, I was able to find one and I was able to save it, and before you know, it was pulled off the judiciary website, It was pulled down.
They are saying they are protecting the rights of the child and the image of the child.
They cannot, because they would use things as A, B, and B, C. They will use initials. So how are you not protecting the rights of or the privacy of the child? I cannot understand it. What are you all trying to hide?
Because the same Privy Council or High Court, or not even call it, but Privy Council, we probably could pull up online and get AD and JB versus KM and whatever, name of the child withheld. And why can't we, if you can get it from England, who has millions of persons in their population, we're just a small country, why are you all hiding that statistic? Because if you don't educate other parents and members of the public, listen, we have had 10,000 cases, and this was the precedent set, because these judges are making decisions, I don't know what precedent, because they're not using any precedent at all. So Children Authority is saying, well, this is the judiciary doing one thing, we could do our own thing. So because no precedent has been set that we, the members of the public, could see, it putting us as parents and other parents and parents to be in positions that we are afraid we can act on behalf of our children. And that's what that is the position they're putting us in. Hush all them out and take what all they get.
Too much of covering up, but okay. Think about this. So we have a warrant to search a home, and we end up there with some of the victims. Yeah, and they can point out certain places. So when we get to a cabinet now, person with the key here today, we come with a warrant, but here we will come back tomorrow when they get the key. And now when the cabinet finally opened, there's no record.
Oh yes,
key witnesses ever having been in the home.
What about the one who recently acquired dementia?
But dementia had to do with short-term memory. Not look. End this thing for me, please. End this thing for me, please. Because
yes, please.
I don't know anything about dementia. Dementia had to do with your short-term memory, not your long-term memory. That happened a long time.
The main witness, who, well, after they found the key for the cabinet, the main person says, well, they're stating that the main person has dementia, so we can't get no evidence again.
They also claiming that the file relative to one of your main witnesses having been a ward in the home has disappeared. Yes. You want to tell me police come into your home, they're knocking on the wrong door, they're kicking in your door, they're rampling up your place and leaving. You want to get something as important as this, and you could tell me that the file cabinet, they had no key? They're locked in the TTPS. I was back in the truck and taking the whole cabinet, or breaking it open and taking out the records. But you have enough time to hide because you want to give the public the view or the impression that you're doing something. Because we notice, you see?
We notice, yeah. So we, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, and by extension the world, we are individuals who can't read and write. So it's only the officers or persons assigned to Children Authority are the ones who can make the decisions for us as parents because we don't have the ability to speak on behalf of our children.
That's right. That's right.
Trinidad and Tobago, good night and thank you for listening.
Until we meet again.